excuse me, fall down.
Oh, it's those guys from South Dakota or wherever they're from. They have the funniest video about that word. The School of Oak. I never stop laughing.
I have Paula tonight. I have her report right here.
Okay, cool. Are we okay live?
Everything, I believe, is good. So, yes, at 5:30, you should be able to start thinking.
All right, I've been advised that our media is all in order, and it's 5:30, so I'll call the meeting to order. And City Clerk, we have a roll call, please.
Gregor.
Present.
Honkola.
Here.
Jobs. Here. Cody.
Yes.
Borshak.
All right, we have 4 out of 5 councilors present. Could we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we'll proceed then to agenda item number 4, which is the consent agenda. And for those that might not be familiar with it, this is the portion of the agenda where we have a number of categories of matters marked with asterisks. And it's customary that we would adopt all of those matters in one motion. The consent agenda, subject to, are there any do any of the councilors want to have any of the matters that are on the consent agenda withdrawn for separate consideration? All right, hearing none, then entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda. Moved, is there support? Support. Moved and supported. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. And then we move down as a result of that to number 10, appearances in public forum. I guess the city clerk, first of all, online, is there anyone that's asked to appear?
Nope, we just have our financial advisor for agenda item 17.1 is online.
Okay, very good. Let's see, I see we have members of the public present. Welcome. We have kind of a standing rule that we try to ask speakers just to limit their remarks to like 3 minutes. But would any of you like to address the council at this point? Mr. Schuck?
Well, I guess I see we're not on the agenda for the proposal we gave about 6 weeks ago. We're just wondering how we're standing on that with the camper situation.
It would be updated during my staff report.
All right, very good. For the record, that was Chris Schuck addressing the council there. Any other matters to address the council on at this point?
There shouldn't be any question on trailers anyhow, because we're denied it for planning and zoning according to the minutes. So evidently, based on the read the minutes.
What was denied?
Campers on lots.
Oh, yeah, I think the city clerk will clarify the steps we're taking to implement that policy. Any further comments from the public? All right, if not, then next item would be a report from staff members and city clerk. Dickinson, do you have a report?
I do. Let me just pull that up real quick here. So, obviously, Public Works Director Wayne Thuringer isn't here tonight, so I didn't get a formal report from him other than just that everybody knows 3rd of July festivities are over and the guys will be transitioning to kind of cleaning that up and moving on to their next priorities. I wanted to remind the City Council that on July 12th at 5 p.m. is our joint meeting with the East Range Police Department and the City of White Lakes over at the Emergency Services Building in White Lakes. Let's see here. The planting project out front of City Hall here was started this last month as well. Some of the sourcing of the plants that will be placed there permanently, like everything else, there are some delays. So be patient as that develops. And once final placements are completed as well, it'll, definitely take a year or two for the garden to fully develop. So
It's a great step forward.
Yeah.
I
I think it
commented
turned out
it
very
looked
nice.
like a structure from out of the Soviet era once we removed the trees and had no plantings there. So this is a great
yeah,
improvement.
definitely. And our student workers helped do the planting to offset that. We had initially hoped for some of the students from the greenhouse, but I guess these 2711 to do the planting. So it's we're adapting as we can, but it's complete for now and looks great. To reference what Mr. Shuck was inquiring about over the last couple weeks, staff had been working with League of Minnesota Cities and other neighboring communities on receiving draft ordinances and adopted ordinances regarding campers on private property, parked in residential areas, etc. And we have a really good list of recommendations that actually we think we may be able to complement one of our existing ordinances. We need to work with our city attorney on formulating a draft and a resolution on what we're recommending, and until we have that completed, we won't have anything to present to council. But it's definitely in motion, and we're prepared to present a draft as soon as we have the final blessing from him.
Do you expect that would be sooner than later, or what?
I know he's returned from vacation, but we haven't scheduled a date yet to get together. Yes, he just returned this week, so yes, it's definitely on the radar, and we've been making slow but steady progress on it. Obviously, we want to implement something that's enforceable, so it takes time to research and come up with something that's not only fitting for other communities, but here at Aurora as well. So, and I feel like the recommendations are very applicable, and I think what council will be find acceptable as well. So the other thing I wanted to note as well was that we recently were awarded a $25,000 grant from the Minnesota Power Foundation for our community center improvements and repairs. So just thank you to them, and they're a really good community partner, and we're excited to make even more improvements at that space outside of what we can fund ourselves. So that was a great surprise.
How much
And
was it, Steph? I'm sorry.
25,000.
That's what I got it.
Mhm.
Okay.
So, and we still are anticipating, we had received a $45,000 grant from CDBG, and then we are anticipating another grant application that we can submit to IRRB later this summer as well. So depending on how that goes, we'll just keep doing more and more there as funding becomes available. And if anybody hasn't checked out the flooring upgrades, they definitely should check them out. It turned out amazing, and we're hoping that the windows will be installed sometime in August. So we'll see.
Good.
That's all I have.
Thank you. City Attorney, anything to report? I realize you're standing in.
No, Mayor.
All right. Thank you for being here anyway. All right, that's good. And I believe Councilor Hawkeye has the library report. Is that correct?
Mayor, thank you. Paula was kind enough to hand off this report. These are Paula's words. The library summer's reading programs are in full swing. They will go through the end of July, so there's still time to sign up. Today, 88 children and 10 teens have signed up to participate, and many have reported reading. While there are no special programs in July, the library is continuing to offer weekly activities, both at the library and a take home to make do for both children and teens. The library is also offering an all ages take and make seed art kit through the Arrowhead Library System, and funded in part by Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund. Of course, new books and other media are regularly added to the library's collection. A new box of books has just arrived today. Stop in the library and check it out, see what's new. I'd also like to add to that, I'm hoping that we all took the time to fill out the strategic plan to help the library grow and meet the needs of the community. There's still time, Mayor, if you haven't.
Yes, well, I'm grimacing, but we'll get there. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. I believe that concludes the staff reports. Let's see, we could move to counselor reports. I'm trying to be cognizant of both Brian's and Shannon's time. Maybe we can make some adjustments later on in the meeting. So, as our junior member, Councilor Gotti.
I was at the fire department drill meeting, and I was informed that the air actuator valve on the intake on the Pierce truck is not working, so it's out of commission for right now, but they're working on finding parts, and I'm sure shortly it'll be back running, but right now it's not. And then also I wanted to talk about, now that I'm on the Planning and Zoning Commission, I'm quite pleased to see how many people are working on their homes. And the only thing I want to say is some of the permits don't give much information for distances from lot lines and the road, and it makes it real hard to approve permits when you don't know if they're within the rules. So, but the number of people that are working on their homes is encouraging, as well as the blight officer is really working hard to try to get things cleaned up between the people working on homes and getting rid of some of the blight around town. It's going to help Aurora. That's all I have.
Just on that, I assume some of that is driven by the Housing and Redevelopment Authority's grant program, right? Those improvement projects all come before your planning commission?
Oh, it certainly is an incentive to get projects going, yeah.
Councilor Jones?
Yep, and to expand on what Councilor Bodie was saying with planning and zoning, the Planning and Zoning Committee has asked the council to consider, along with like the camper ordinances, storage containers and Quonset huts. And then they'd also like some guidance on solar panels and wind generation, because we currently have nothing in any of our ordinances, and I think everybody got the email today, all of a sudden it started coming through the pipeline, so with solar panels and wind generators. So they would like some guidance in what we're gonna be seeing there. As far as the RAMs, so we are not having any meetings now until September, so there's a lull, because I guess we can't have enough people to have a quorum in the summer. I have been getting, so I wanted to let everybody know, I have been getting some emails from some of our constituents, if you will, that there's people feeding pigeons again. Mm-hmm. So we need to really stop feeding the pigeons. I noticed that we didn't have a lot of them for a while, but now all of a sudden they're coming back. So, yeah, that, and then I was also checking in, somebody had asked about the sidewalk outside the post office. I know a few months ago we'd asked Wayne to check into it, to speak with the contractor that engineered that. It's sunk again this spring, so I'm thinking we should probably get that taken care of before the warranty runs out, because I don't want us to have to prepay for that again. So have you heard anything on that?
I have not.
No? Okay.
I think if you're referring to the immediate door.
It's gone now.
That went down,
Yes.
and now it's gone up.
Yep, and it's not, I mean, it shouldn't be doing that.
No.
So when the contractor did it, I mean, there should be some kind of warranty in place. They should fix it before we have to pay it, have it fixed again. So, and at that, the Joint Advisory Committee, our summer stuff is in full swing. We've got full beaches open, all the sports are in full swing, so our softball and everything, softball and all of our summer sports are in full swing. So not much of a report there. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Honcolay.
A report from Tri-City Ambulance meeting on June 28th. They have 3 ambulances. Typically, there's 2 people out at a time in each ambulance. They're running low on their EMTs and the hours in which each EMT has to work. So they're looking at something called a Minnesota Fire Protection Emergency Medical Service Special Taxing Districts, which would be that if passed, each individual within our taxing district would be charged a certain amount, which would help then offset with the services. Stephanie, can you expand on that at all?
From what I understood was that the the taxing district would be based off of the current service area, and the, each taxpayer would be based off of their estimated market value. And that revenue source actually would stream, instead of to each of the individual cities and then the township as well that are involved in the Tri-City ambulance, it would go directly to the taxing district, whatever it would be named. So essentially it would kind of end up, from my understanding, turn out somewhat like the police department, where they would have a board and the employees of White Lakes currently that are, say, the EMS director and her assistant and the EMTs would then report to that board and have that sort of dynamic. So those were kind of the high level points that I had picked up from the
And by
meeting.
doing this, the Tri-City ambulance may be able to hire more full-time EMTs,
Yes.
which will offset the usage.
Yes.
They currently in the city of Aurora, we have 2 first responders. We'd like to expand on that. So Stephanie's kind of exploring options with that. We need more, right? The Parks and Rec, Celebrate Aurora did a great job with putting a bunch of activities downtown, and I'm sure you'll speak on that because you're part of that committee, so I'm not going to ring the bell for you.
And the splash pad, I
yeah.
thought you'd take the
So,
lead.
yeah, it's a splash pad. July 2nd, we had a celebration of the opening of our splash pad. It was open last year for a short 2-week period of time before it was shut down for the fall. So this season it's been open. It's been open 12 to 8 p.m. every day, with a little hiccup here and there with the water department. And it's used, as you see when you drive by, it's used by many of our residents, many of outside people, families come in and they visit our businesses. It's really great for our community. Splash pad rules have been placed on the building. We intend to get 2 more signs just so everyone's aware. Some concerns there are pets in the splash pad. The rules specifically state no pets except service animals, of course, just because we can have what's going on with animals sometimes, the unspeakables. And we've also run into individuals bringing glass containers and bottles to that area, and you can have glass containers at a location where kids are running around, particularly without shoes. So that was a little bit unsettling. We have a meeting for Parks and Rec on July 18th at 3 p.m. 2 of the topics of discussion will be the ice rink, or hockey rink if you will, and the splash pad. So I'd like to invite the community. It is an open meeting and the community is able to come and give feedback, and I'd like to see whomever is interested to join us there. And Spruce Up Aurora, I wanted to say just a great job the community has done coming together, all the volunteers, to make our town so inviting when we have all these activities. It's really important when they come into town. The signs that Al Hodnick helped make, it was great to see that there. I see on our web page, that we still have the old Facebook, or our old sign up. So I'd like to see the new Aurora sign as the little icon on the top of that page. And that is all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Councilor. Certainly been a busy time in the community, and picking up on what Councilor Onkler was talking about, just a real privilege to participate in the opening ceremonies there at the splash pad. So much just unabashed joy. It's fun to see so many kids having so much time and enjoying the benefits of all the efforts that both the Caring for the Kids organization, but the Public Works Department and everybody put into making all that happen. We don't often give enough attention to creating joyful situations in the community, and that certainly was one, and will continue to be a gift that keeps giving. So thanks to all those that had a part in that. Let's see, another joyful thing to report was a small group of citizens here in the community have been working with success to manage to rescue the shopper and transition it into the East Range shopper into new ownership. A special limited liability company was created, and I think there'll be more announcements about the owner and his wife who are going to run it. and have bought the assets of the old shopper. It's now located, by the way, in the old Moose Hall, the North Shore building, and the doors of that are publicly open at various times. So if your curiosity gets the better of you and you want to see what the operation is and where it's located, or better yet, put some advertisements in, that's an option that's available also. The water board update on that, basically, again, to reiterate, the plans for the new system are, the drawings and SEH engineering work is all complete. Substantially all, if not all, of the state environmental approvals have been given. There is a pending archaeological investigation requirement that's being addressed because that was an old portage route. But given the fact it's all overburdened from the mining operations, some of us on the board are a little skeptical that anything's going to be able to be found. The last chunk of financing that we're hoping to get from the Public Facilities Authority is obviously in limbo with the other bond-related issues. So hopefully the governor and legislature will get together on getting it back in session at some point to deal with that matter that's affecting so many infrastructure projects. On your own calendars, if you could anticipate, we're going to try to have a joint meeting of the Water Board, the Town of White Board, and the City Council in the last week of July. And we're going to first reach out to our engineers and financial advisors to try to confirm a date that we'll suggest out there. But just keep that in mind as your calendars start filling up there. Hopefully within a week, we'll have some word related to that. Let's see, just a plug for the Northern Lights Music Festival. It's full swing, and it's, let's see, 19th season. So you'll see some new faces around town, and I assume the businesses get a little bump from attendance there, and so that's going on too. And July 3rd, it was just a great privilege and a lot of fun time too to introduce the many Little Miss Aurora candidates and the Queen candidates out in the athletic field there, and then to see so many people enjoying the 4th of July parade. So I think our community appears to be healthy and having moments of joy, and I don't know that we could ask anything better for our citizens. So that's the mayor's report. Let's see, returning back to the agenda, under old business, we have the 16.1 joint use equipment agreement. City Clerk, do you want to bring us up to date on that?
Sure. So we had, I believe our last meeting, you had the original 2011 agreement for joint use of equipment with City of White Lakes, and then proposed amendment to that agreement as well, that was presented by the City of White Lakes to City of Aurora staff a while back. So we had taken a little bit of extra time to consult with obviously our legal staff, and then just staff in general as well, to go over some of the items that could be considered or agreed upon with the City of White Lakes. Those were mostly summarized in your memo for the council agenda items. So certainly if anybody has any additional questions based off of them, we can have that discussion now. Just to give a recap for the people that are here too, some of the things that staff was concerned about was just that if we were going to have an amendment to the agreement to include all jointly owned equipment between the City of Aurora and City of White Lakes. And then the City of White Lakes, in the amendment that they presented to the City of Aurora, is requesting $97,072.20 to co-own a 2022 truck that they acquired solely on their own versus jointly with the City of Aurora. The City of White Lakes could have grant funding of up to 80% reimbursed to them. When we had met with staff last, they were unable to confirm at that meeting if they had received the reimbursement at that time or not, and at what level. The other things we had kind of discussed as well is that depending on the amount that could be agreed upon, would we be able to work out alternate payments, annual payments, or was lump sum necessary based off of the amendment that was approved by the White Lakes Council. So, and that lump sum payment would be due in April of 2023. So there was other items that were discussed as well, and a couple meetings were had. So I guess, I don't know if it would be an appropriate time if, City Attorney, if you'd like to comment on any of it, or...
Yeah, as far as the substantive contract terms between the cities, our firm has a conflict in that we represent both the City of Aurora and the City of White Lakes, and so I'll leave that to council discussion. If there's any specific questions on the agreement, the shared use agreement, happy to field those, but nothing specifically at this time.
Great. So, well, I'd anticipate there'd probably be some questions from council for me then, and I'll do my best to answer without Wayne or Jim here, but, so.
Well, one legal question, I think, that came up anyway in discussions with you was the question, we have had a joint equipment agreement with the City of White Lakes, which anticipated that some steps would be taken, right, in the event that either entity were to go about acquiring or having to replace some of the joint equipment. Is that correct? Do you want? I think council, it might be appropriate to confirm at least that that's part of the agreement that exists.
So it is in Article 1 of the agreement from 2011. It's contemplated that some of the equipment to be used in the future may fall under this agreement. But it doesn't explicitly specify whether it's required or not of either entity in purchasing any future equipment that fall under the joint use agreement. And White Lakes purchasing of it by themselves kind of takes it out of the joint use agreement, because there's a process if you were to purchase it jointly and have it be subject to this agreement. So the new truck seems as if it wouldn't be. That's why there's the amendment to the agreement, which would include the new truck. So, and then the terms of that would be separately governed and negotiated and arrived at.
So one conclusion I'd draw anyway from that is the old sledge truck therefore must continue to be governed by the agreement and be equally available to both entities?
Yes. Yep.
Does it provide in any way that one of the two parties can unilaterally compel the sale of a piece of equipment?
Yeah, so what it anticipates is that the entities are going to work together in taking care of the shared use of that equipment as it's phased out. And so that includes pricing it at the time when it's not being used by one of the entities for the other entity to buy it out.
So that's actually contemplated?
Yeah, so that's the idea in the agreement. So, and if not, if you can't come to an agreement on what that looks like, then it can be sold at auction, and the proceeds split between the entities. So.
Let's see, councilors, I'll open up. Do you have questions? I always have questions, but.
What timeline was given
We
regarding
have a
this?
due date to get back to White Lakes, but July 15th of 2022, that the council approved the addendum. Otherwise, they may move forward with pursuing terminating the agreement and working through those options that were just discussed. But the dollar amount of the 97,000 plus, and then for a City of Aurora to pay City of White Lakes, that due date was April 15th of 2023, and the City of White Lakes presented them terms without consulting City of Aurora staff. We weren't included in the process of coming up with them terms.
Councilor Joss?
So the way I understand this, we have two options. We either buy out the old sludge truck, or we.
For the record, it'll note that Councilor Warshak has appeared.
All right.
Gone for a little bit and I lose my seat. Man, oh man.
My tag was placed here.
Welcome. All right, I'm sorry, Councilor
No,
Drops.
that's okay. So we buy out the old sludge truck, or we pay into the new sludge truck. Those are our only two options, correct?
No, we have other options as well that staff has considered, and ultimately, staff would not recommend approving the addendum, even though it was approved by City of Hoyt Lakes Council while we were still requesting information from them. The conditions in the amendment of the agreement, the city staff are not in favor of.
So can they sell, so the way I understand it is they can sell the old sludge truck out they can sell it, right? And then what would we be left with?
So to clarify, they can't unilaterally sell it.
Okay.
It's like typical joint ownership. Either party can buy out the other party. If you can't agree on the price of what that would be, then it would be surplused and sold at
Okay.
auction. And the proceeds. So,
What length of time are we given to respond to this? Do they give us an adequate amount of time to state that they no longer wanted to share this equipment?
We met in April and had discussed a few options, the ones that exist in the agreement, and Aurora had requested a couple other options to be considered as well. When we went to that meeting in April, obviously it seemed like very much, a discussion, and between that meeting and when it made it to council, we had weighed a few options. I had some email correspondence back and forth with the city staffs, and we met one more time after our last council meeting, which was, a couple weeks ago. But after City of Hoyt Lakes City Council met at their last meeting is when we were given the deadline of July 15th.
Well, some of the considerations that are roaming around in my mind are, first of all, a spirit of good faith and cooperation between communities should be paramount, given that we engage in so many common activities and so on. And if I'm reading the situation correctly, the $97,000 that we're being asked to pay is half of what the cost of the item was?
Yep, it would be half of the cost of was invoiced to the City of Hoyt Lakes for the 2022 truck. Yes.
Right, all right. And if our information is correct, which I don't know, it's been confirmed, that of that, $194,000, the City of Hoyt Lakes would be liable only for 20% of it, probably, based on the
After
Public
reimbursed.
Facilities Authority. Something in my gut tells me this is inequitable. I can see paying Hoyt Lakes for half of what their net costs are. But I find it difficult, having worked with the Public Facilities Authority, to believe the Public Facility Authority would find this to be consistent with their grant terms, that it somehow disrupted a joint jurisdictional plan that was in effect and entitled the grantee to somehow obtain a windfall. I mean, that's the best I can read it at the moment. I don't know how to get from there to some kind of an agreement. Councilor Warshak, have you been giving this any consideration?
I agree with what you just said. I just can't believe that we would be held for $97,000 or whatever, and I mean, the whole agreement to me has not been followed. I mean, from what I understand, so, which is upsetting in itself, so yeah.
I think the one other thing to note as well that staff has discussed, and as I had referenced earlier, is that we don't have a lot of comfort with recommending an approval of the amendment, especially the dollar amount as well, as because of the fact that, with timing's everything on some things, right? working into our wastewater treatment facility project as well, where we'll likely be able to also apply for the same grant and then be reimbursed at 80% of eligible expenses. So, you know, conflicted, you know, we've for years jointly owned and acquired equipment with our neighboring city, and cost shared and all of those things. But if we're going to be required to pay almost $100,000 to co-own the truck that was acquired by City of White Lakes this year, but then if we waited a couple years, be able to just pay a much smaller amount too, does that, you know, just weighing out those options as well.
I'm just, having personally met with the head of the Public Facilities Authority and knowing him to be such a reasonable man, but also one supportive of multi-jurisdictional efforts, I'm finding it is going to be at best awkward for him 2 years from now. We go in and ask to have 80% of our separate sludge truck expenses paid. Something's amiss, you know, ajar here in terms of intergovernmental relationships and things. I frankly would like to visit with Jeff Freeman at the PFA and say, what's your call on this? Because what you just outlined, it looks like 2 years from now we'd be coming in for the same request.
Have they thrown out any price for the used sludge truck?
We did receive some estimates at the meeting that took place in April, but that those weren't, nothing was agreed upon at that time. I want to say that on average they were somewhere between $5,000 and $10,000, if I remember right, for the
They're not
1993.
holding us
So-
hostage
Right.
with the truck then?
Right. So ultimately, you know, and maybe this is good, you know, where I'll run a couple scenarios out there and you'll have to confirm maybe, is that when staff spoke about what's the best path to move forward, do you approve the proposed amendment to the agreement, agreeing to terms that you don't agree to give you more time to weigh options or renegotiate potentially with the city council, as they've already approved the amendment as presented? Or do we not move forward with approving the amendment and decide to move forward with sole ownership of the 1993 truck? Because a lot can happen, obviously, in a couple years as well. So there was some concern as well with where the application of the solids is placed, was land that the mining company could possibly evict as well. So there's just so many things that are kind of up in the air. There's a lot of uncertainty. So I don't know if you have any comment on that either, but it was things that were considered today was, you know, do you approve an amendment that you're not on board with the terms?
You could always ask for a joint meeting with the Council of White Lakes to discuss it. If staff has been discussing and not able to come up with an agreement, to raise your concerns with the amendment directly with them. But as far as those things, I don't have any specific comment on those.
Okay.
I'd be inclined to counteroffer, which seems to be in the nature of most good, healthy agreement negotiations, that where we would say it is our impression, unless you can prove us otherwise, that your net costs will be 20% of $194,000, which comes out to 40-something, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And that we are willing to offer payment for half of that amount by April 2023. And in the absence of agreement to that we'd take up the legal counsel's, invite them, if they refuse that offer, to have a joint city council meetings to discuss the matter. Does that seem an equitable way to proceed, or?
Would that give us enough time? I mean, to meet the deadline. I mean, obviously, we're not gonna meet the deadline then.
It's their deadline, right?
Are you speaking of the July 15th deadline? The email that I received from the staff said that they may exercise the right at that point if the council does not approve the amendment. So I think that staff would feel comfortable with moving forward and pursuing a change of the amendment, and hopefully they'd adjust the timeline. If not,
Well, if the rest of the council isn't willing to have a joint meeting, I'll be glad to go over there and share some thoughts with the council in White Lakes if necessary. But
I think it'd be better if we went together as a council.
Absolutely.
yes, I think,
I'm in
yeah,
agreement with that.
good. It speaks
Yeah.
volumes, yes, I agree entirely. Does anyone have a motion made? Let's put it that way.
To have a joint meeting with the White Lakes Council, make a motion to meet with the White Lakes Council to discuss this.
Yes,
Yep, I'll make that.
all right.
I'll support it.
Moved and supported. Further discussion? Councilor Warthog? No?
Could we do this soon?
Yes.
No.
Can we set a date, or can we try to get this done within the next week or two? I mean,
We'll
that's
all be
even.
over there together on the 12th.
Right, could we just ask for a meeting?
Possibly, they could set aside something on the agenda or a separate 15 minutes to discuss this.
What time is that meeting?
5 o'clock, I believe.
So maybe we could schedule a joint meeting at 4:30.
Yeah,
and,
You have time to publicly notice it, so.
Yeah, with 3 days, yeah, we got time.
Yeah. Both the meetings have been posted already, but we could repost with
If
an
you're
additional
if you're
item.
proposing a change in the time,
You would need to get reposted.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I'd feel a little presumptuous to take time away from the Public Safety Board itself.
We would need to.
So-
Yeah.
4:30 on the 12th, would,
we can only ask.
Yeah.
we can only ask. All right, so it's been moved and supported.
And it'll need to be
to-
posted tomorrow.
It'd be-
to make
yeah.
that request, and I assume that the city clerk would notify the city of White Lakes of our request. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that carries unanimously, and I think that takes care of item 16.1. Now, 17.1, the wastewater treatment facility and I improvement engineering proposal. I think we have both Brian from Moulton and Mank, and then we have Shannon on the Zoom session, right?
Yeah. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I think I can get things started, and we'll let Shannon fill in at the end. So there is actually two different items in front of you. I was going to start with the smoke testing proposal before we get into the wastewater treatment facility. And so the smoke testing, just giving some background, is some continued efforts on the I&I reduction. And so obviously we've been going through the sump pump inspections, taking one avenue to try to reduce the I&I, meeting with staff. We've identified that smoke testing would be another good step. And what smoke testing is basically smoke is blown into the sanitary sewer system and will show improper connections. So for instance, if smoke is blown into the sanitary sewer system, you should see smoke coming out of your vent on your house because that is connected into the sanitary sewer system. You should not see smoke coming out of your rain leader or your gutter on your house because that would mean that your gutter is connected to the sanitary sewer. Another example would be a storm sewer in the street. If you see smoke coming out of that storm sewer manhole, that means your storm sewer is connected to your sanitary sewer, which is bringing rainwater into the sanitary sewer. So in general, that's what smoke testing is. There's different setups. Obviously, there's some public notification and fire department notification, so everybody's aware of what's going on because there may be smoke present at places that are not expected. So what this does could identify an improper cross connection. And that's one next step to see what other problems may be out there. And from that, you could develop what needs to be done either in the short term for some of these fixes or maybe even a long-term capital improvement plan of starting to identify other needs in the system. Back when we first started talking about I&I, we talked about there's different steps to go through. You can camera the sewers, there's the smoke testing, obviously we've done the sump pumps, and that you kind of step through it in different phases to see what gives you the best bang for your buck. We determined sump pumps was the first step. Smoke testing is a cheaper option than televising. So televising would actually be sending a camera down the sewer, and there may be areas of town that makes sense for. But it would first make sense to look at some of the smoke testing to see if we can gain more information. So working with staff, they've identified some specific areas for smoke testing in the city. There was a map attached with the proposal showing what staff determined to be maybe the more critical areas or the higher priorities. There was some discussion with staff that eventually it may make sense to do the entire town because there certainly could be connections anywhere through town. And so there was discussion of, do we take a smaller piece right now, or do we just try to do the entire town and get it done? And so both of those options were laid out in the proposal. I think subsequent discussion at the staff level came to the conclusion of let's start with the smaller scope of smoke testing and see what type of information that provides before we look at going further. So that is one piece of this, and any questions on the procedure or the smoke testing in terms of financing and how this fits into the overall funding package, I maybe just hold on to that to kind of tie everything together with Shannon here at the end. So any general questions on the smoke testing?
I'm just curious, is this some kind of a uniquely colored smoke? I mean, image of choosing the Pope comes to mind, of the different colors there. But to differentiate it from other smoke that might arise from a chimney, or
it doesn't. It can be a standard smoke color, and you'll see it seeping out of. So basically, there'll be staff on the ground walking the streets when the smoke is blown in, looking for smoke. So it may seep out of the ground. If you had a broken pipe that was just buried, it might actually seep out of the ground, or it could come out of roof stacks or anywhere. So the staff that'll be out doing it know what they're looking for and are going to know if something's amiss with it. They probably could color it. The ones I've seen, there was no special coloring to it. So I guess it probably could be though.
Oh, I don't know.
And I say that with great appreciation as an artist.
well, a curious mind again, just wondering how this is done, and I'm glad our citizens are listening to this on tape, so they'd be somewhat prepared for smoke
Should probably
repairs.
put an advertisement in the
There's
newspaper.
requirements for notification.
Yeah, and and that is in the schedule in here about public notification period prior to the actual field work taking place. And so in the table there on the first page, depending on approval, public notification the last week in July, and then about 2 weeks after that, performing the actual smoke testing. So there would be some public notification going on. And also there is staff out on the street while it's happening because they need to visualize and check for smoke. So there is people present while it's going on that if residents are curious or something happens, there are boots on the ground out there too. So for the portion that staff was recommending, the cost for that smoke testing was $16,800 to do the areas on the attached map.
And these ultimately could be reimbursable expenses under the entire.
And so for the
mercury.
entire wastewater project, there is the mercury component. There also was the flow reduction component. If you recall, there were the notice of violations for bypass events at the wastewater plant. And the flow, the high flow ties into the ability to meet mercury, so they kind of all are interconnected projects. And so this can be seen as what we call prior incurred costs when you get to the PFA loan on the actual wastewater project.
Is there a motion to approve the expenditure of $16,800 for this smoke project? So moved. Support.
Support.
Support. Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries, so that component's taken care of.
So then the next item was the proposal for the actual wastewater treatment facility design project. And I just want to thank Clerk Dickinson and Public Works Director Thuringer for kind of filling the gaps in for me last time when we had some technical difficulties. So I think they did a good job of going through the schedule I laid out there. So I'm going to do a little bit of background. I don't want to go back through that entire schedule, but just to remind everyone, this entire kind of mercury project started back in 2019 when the city was notified about an upcoming mercury limit from MPCA. So this ball has kind of been rolling since that time. We're actually 3 years into that timeline already since this kind of started. And they notified the city that a mercury limit would be coming eventually, and it took a year and a half to work through the permitting process to when that permit was put out. And then eventually that leads to a compliance schedule where MPCA sets dates that the city must comply with for this new mercury limit. And so just as a reminder, we have been working on multiple projects kind of since this first started. So there was a facility plan written that is required by MPCA of how to meet the mercury limit, and that identified new filters and then I&I reduction as the two main things. Obviously, the sump pump inspections have been going on. There's been some public education efforts on the I&I as well. The installation of the fine screen was just recently completed, and so seeding has been done on that project, and there's just a little bit of, there's some paving work, and that project is complete. The screen's been running now for a few weeks and doing the job that we hoped it would there. And so those are some of the steps that have already been taken kind of in this overall process. Table 1 at the bottom of page 1 has the compliance schedule. And so the next step on there is submittal of plans and specifications by January 30th of 2023. And that is in your permit with the MPCA. There's some other dates in there. Issue a notice to proceed to a contractor by January 30th of 2024. So that would mean the project gets bid before January 2024. That will be funding dependent, and I have had past projects that were not able to bid because of bonding bills not being passed, and which very well, who knows. In those scenarios, if you violate the schedule from MPCA, typically they do send a notice of violation because technically it's violating the permit, but there's no fines attached and they understand that you're waiting for funding. So if you can't meet that deadline because of funding, it's not a huge worry on your part. They are asking for a couple construction progress updates, and then ultimately the goal is to meet the mercury limit by May 31st of 2026. So that's kind of the schedule we're on. Table 2 on the next page presents the schedule of efforts to meet the MPCA compliance schedule. So the first item there would be authorizing the design here in July. Then design would take place between now and January. The plans and specs would be submitted to MPCA in January. That's a submittal set. It's not necessarily a full bid set. At that point, there are still efforts that can be made to finalize it for bidding. Approvals and funding applications would be in spring of 2023. The funding list would be published in September of 2023. And if the funding is in place, then the project could be bid in late 2023. I have it as November. And if the funding is not there, the project would likely sit for another year, waiting for another funding cycle to go through, and would not move forward until the full funds are available to keep the project affordable for the city. And it's possible that it could sit a year waiting for those funds, just depending on what happens. I'm going to pause there. If there's any questions on schedule on any of this.
At what point does Shannon join into this discussion?
So I can give a lead-in for Shannon, and so he has an item in here about interim financing through Minnesota Rural Water Association. So you can see with this schedule is that the city is required to do the design, submit the engineering, but your loan doesn't start until you actually award the project to a contractor. Which if the legislature doesn't fund the programs, could be 2 years down the line, and so you have an investment to make up front to meet the requirements, but the loan may be 2 years down the road. So this Minnesota Rural Water funding saw this need as a gap funding for cities because they needed to finance the design and they can't get reimbursement until it enters construction, which can cause a funding gap problem for cities. So that's where Minnesota Rural Water created this loan program, which has been I've utilized with several clients, and Shannon has too, where you can go through Rural Water to get that interim financing and defer all the payments and get that rolled into the PFA loan, so you don't have to make payments until you can close the PFA loan, at which point you'll start getting reimbursement.
So even the interest payments don't have to be paid in the interim?
That's right, Shannon. You can capitalize the interest, but maybe Shannon, you can step in there.
Yeah, and the material that I supplied did just that. It is at the option of the city. I did confirm with PFA staff that not only principal on the loan, but also issuance cost and interest are eligible for their funding. I do ask them that each time we do this, just to get a confirmation. So Peter Bradshaw is your loan officer, and he did confirm that those are eligible costs. And so ultimately, Brian's correct that this funding doesn't jump in until we essentially have bids in hand, and we have, on projects of this magnitude, significant costs to incur between now and when we have bids. And so Rural Water has a couple of different programs. One you've accessed previously, which is essentially the same program, is able to provide financing for projects like this. We did, in this instance, approach the program lender, and he had quoted a rate that we thought there was an opportunity to do a little bit better. And this program, through Rural Water, will work with other lenders. We're not exclusive to just the program lender. If we find somebody that provides a better interest rate and better terms, we'll work with them. And additionally, the reason why we still keep it in the program is because the fees for the work that we do, what bond counsel does, are all pre-negotiated through that program and lower than what you would pay on a typical standalone deal. And so we recommended, if you choose to finance these costs, to use the program to reduce the fees, but work with your local bank because they've provided a heck of an interest rate. And Stephanie was kind enough to reach out and direct us to make contact with them to do that. And so, the interest rate they proposed was 2.44%, and we haven't. Most of the proposals we're seeing on similar projects have been a fair amount higher than that. And so we thought it was a great proposal, but it's based on whether or not you want to finance these costs at this time. But it's either financing them or drawing them from cash, or if you have another grant opportunity that you think could cover, the roughly $1,250,000 between now and the bid process, you can certainly try to access that. Or you could do both and use grant funds to pay this temporary financing off. But at the end of the day, if it's an eligible cost for the PFA funding, a significant portion of this cost is going to be grant eligible. And so it's going to get rolled into a funding package that's much larger. It is going to be grant eligible along with loan eligible. And so rather than depleting reserves to a point that's probably not manageable, we find that our clients typically borrow these funds and recognize that PFA is ultimately going to be the long-term lender on the project. More than happy to answer questions.
Just to clarify, for action items here, then, we're actually being asked, first of all, to authorize Bolton and Bank to proceed with the final design. Is that correct? Yes. And secondly, it appears like it would be in order to approve seeking the financing you proposed, or would that be for a later time?
So, if you thought it was appropriate, it would be a motion to just direct staff to make application to the program. That doesn't obligate you to take the loan. Ultimately, Stephanie would submit the application. It's a relatively simple document to prepare. She's done it before, and ultimately, we would have the rate locked, and we would have an award resolution presented to council for consideration. And if at that time you have new information that makes you decide you don't want to take the loan, you wouldn't have to. You could decide not to approve the award resolution, and you wouldn't have any fees charged, just to be clear. So you're not obligating the city to anything other than making application by the motion that you'd make this evening if you decided to do that.
All sounds very reassuring. All right. All right. I hope it's not premature. I don't want to jump on your parade there, Brian, but would it be appropriate then to entertain a motion to approve Bolton and Make proceeding with the final design and bidding documents? Is there a motion?
I'll make that motion.
All right. And so Councilor Cody supporting it. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, so we've taken care of that item, and then I think it'd be appropriate to then entertain a motion to authorize the city clerk to make application for the loan as outlined by Mr. Sweeney, and I'll make that motion. Okay.
And I'll support your motion.
All right, so we have moved and supported on that. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, so we've taken care of those two items. Now, Brian and Shannon, any other matters that we should be addressing on this right at this time?
I don't think so. I'm happy to answer any other questions you might have. I don't have anything else for you.
All right, certainly appreciate the good work your firms have done here, and it's always not always a pleasant thing to have to confront the magnitude of the expenditures that we're viewing here, but it's nice to know we're getting a good professional guidance, both financially and engineering-wise. So,
Yeah, we're looking forward to finishing this, and like I said, the kind of ball started rolling 3 years ago, so we're about halfway through that process, so it is a lengthy process, and we appreciate you relying on us and trusting us to guide you through that, and I look forward to continuing that, so.
good.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you both.
Thank you, Shannon.
All right. Moving on to 17.2, Resolution 2022-20, authorizing application to the Department of Iron Range Resources and Rehabilitation for their community grant program. That's item 17.2. City Clerk, do you want to give any additional explanation, or?
No, we just have opportunity to apply for grant funding through IRRB. They're opening their half-year cycle for multiple grant programs right now. We had some assigned fundings available to pursue some items that would be eligible for a one-to-one cost share if approved by the IRRR board. So this resolution encompasses applying to all the grant programs that I have listed, in community infrastructure, culture and tourism, and residential redevelopment.
And salt shed in the community center.
Yep.
Those are all separate? Yeah. All right. Well, certainly always seems in order to try to seek money from another source. Is there a motion to authorize the application for those funds? Moved. Support? Support. Moved and supported. Further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Hopefully we'll be successful. Very good. Thank you for identifying those opportunities. Of course. 17.3, we're looking at a request to write off some of the utility accounts on parcels that we have now acquired, right?
Yes.
City
Yep.
Clerk, you want to?
We recently acquired some tax forfeit properties from St. Louis County. For the tax forfeit properties, the county has requested that we always continue billing even if they're not occupied, because those fees would then be assessed to a potential buyer should it be done private party. Now that we know that we are the purchaser, we won't be billing ourselves. So the recommendation would be is to write off the utility balances for the 2 parcels that had fees still pending.
So just clarification, we didn't end up actually providing a lot of services. It was just being billed because that's our policy for...
We bill a flat rate
Flat
for
rate.
a residential service, so the amounts don't necessarily reflect actual usage. It's a monthly fee.
I'll make a motion to write off these 2 accounts.
All right, motion, I'll support. Further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, forgiven. Moving on to 17.4, University of Minnesota non-disclosure agreement and equipment placement agreements. Is this a matter of city clerk you should be addressing, or the city attorney, or?
Well, I had, for these 2 agreements from the University of Minnesota's Natural Resources Research Institute, so non-disclosure agreement and then equipment placement agreement. Staff had reviewed and had no issues, and there's 2 other neighboring communities that had worked through the same project with them as well in the past couple years. So we didn't notice anything. City Attorney Carney has been away on vacation, so I would recommend approving the agreements contingent on his approval. I was hoping to meet with him today and wasn't able to catch up with him, so I think that would be probably the best route to move forward unless...
No, I don't have a further update than that. I
Okay.
would suggest that you do just that and make it contingent on his approval.
Can we approve both agreements in one motion, or should we do those separately? Councilor Warshak, any words of wisdom from your vast experience?
No, I would
Let's
hope we
maybe
could
do
do.
them separately in case Mike comes up with something on either. Then we don't hold up the process.
Okay, so I'd entertain a motion then to approve the non-disclosure agreement first. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Moved, support?
Support.
Moved and supported. Further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, so that motion carries. I think we should assume that in that motion was subject to review of legal counsel.
Yes.
There's an
Yep.
agreement. Everyone
Yeah.
seems to be nodding their head, so, okay. Then entertain a motion to approve the equipment placement agreement subject to legal counsel's approval of the terms. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved. Support?
Support.
Moved and supported. Further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's approved also then. Moving on to 17.5, we have a donation proposal for the Edward Ice Field. I'm not sure where I put that, but,
They're presenting.
oh, okay. Would you like to address the council on that?
Sure. My name is Melissa Skelton. I'm a member of the Mesabi Softball Boosters Club.
And Matt Zimmer, head coach of the Sun Softball.
Oh, welcome, yes.
Thank you for having us. The reason we're here is I recently became involved in the Softball Boosters Club, and our job is to support the team, or to support the coach in developing the team. And one of the coach's requests was to have a batting cage at Edward Ice Ball Field, so that he could safely coach the girls in learning to bat while also watching the girls on the field. So we are here tonight to kind of ask for permission of the project in concept versus a really detailed proposal before we start really getting into the details and pursuing additional funding. So if you have any questions, you can feel free to ask us that.
Counselor Jobs, you're kind of our recreation counselor, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great, it's a great idea that's gonna help the coaches, keep that, I don't see a problem with it. I think it's
I don't see any issues with it.
I don't see any
think it's a good
issues at
idea.
all.
No.
I had met with them as well last week or the week before, hard with the holiday, and the plan seems extremely well thought out. The funding seems very attainable. Maintenance, repairs, all those things were discussed. Any future costs the city could incur were very limited. Storage of material in the off-season, again, was discussed and seemed very reasonable. So I, with discussing with the Public Works Director as well, and other Public Works staff, they didn't have any issues with the proposal either.
And I would also like to add that we know that you have a park plan, and so we did talk with Stephanie about the park plan and made sure that whatever we were proposing would fit within the plan. We did have a document of an overhead view of the park area and where the batting cage would fit in there. I did not bring it. I don't know if you had printed off any copies.
I can provide council with an outline of what that looks like, but we did also as staff review the potential location and there were no conflicts.
So our plan is to request funding and possibly volunteer assistance and also maybe engineering help for the process of this project. But like I said, I don't really want to pursue that until we know that the city is on board with us, moving forward.
So we'd be basically entertaining what, a motion of encouragement and support and appreciation for the efforts? Okay.
Well, approving their donation proposal would allow them to move forward with those items as well because you as council is approving them placing the addition at Edward Ice
All right, so we
Field.
actually have to approve the proposal.
Yes.
All right. Is there a motion?
Should it go to Parks first, Parks Committee?
If you'd like it to.
Well, I mean, otherwise, will that set a precedent that you will go straight to council and not to planning and zoning, or we just go, see what I'm getting at here?
Yes, right, procedurally. Is this a time-sensitive issue? Would it cause any adverse consequences if it did go to the Parks Committee? When does the Parks Committee meet next?
Typically, we meet the third Monday, but we decided in the last meeting not to meet until August, but then Steph emailed today requesting a meeting this month.
So
And the council, I'm not opposed to it.
Right.
I think it's a great idea, but are we setting a precedent here? That we're skipping one committee, and then what's the function of that committee then if we don't bring it to them first?
So the third Monday would be the 18th, and we meet again on the 19th.
Mm-hmm.
So if Park and Recreation Committee got an opportunity to consider on the 18th, and we brought it back on the 19th, that would work?
Sure.
So
Unless
probably-
anyone would like to go forth with the vote and not sidestep the throwing caution to the wind.
If it's not going to jeopardize things, I suppose the procedures exist for a reason, and I don't want to. Very appropriate point, Councilor Rockula. All right, so I believe it'd be in order then to refer the matter to the committee and motion to do that and to reschedule the matter for consideration on the meeting on the 19th. Is there a motion to that effect?
I make that motion.
Moved, support? Support. Oh. Further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Well, thanks so much for that generous offer. It's been exciting to see the interest in baseball and softball that's been percolating up this summer. Yeah. So,
Would you like one or both of us to be at the park meeting?
That'd be great if you could present.
Okay.
yeah, maybe just
Then after
communicate.
after the council meeting, if you have a second, I'll.
What time is that meeting?
3 p.m.
I can follow up with information, and if someone can be there, that would be great. If you have conflicts, I can follow up with the committee with what was presented.
Great. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right. 17.6, other matters. Anything, City Clerk, that you don't have brought before us? Any councilors? Any other matters? All right. If not,
Actually, I'm gonna look at, I don't know, can we put this on the agenda for the next meeting? We got a letter from one of our.
I think that I'm going to discuss that with, that actually was an invoice for East Range PD, and I had spoke to Tim Suler about it, so before we move forward with any discussion on it or adding it to an agenda, I'd like to talk to him and City Attorney Carney.
Okay,
Next meeting will be on next meeting's agenda then, right?
well,
With an item on the community center on next meeting.
we'll be meeting with Solar on the 12th, right? So it'd be an opportunity to, in advance of that meeting, to find out how to proceed. Is this something that,
It wasn't on the agenda.
as long as Richard's here, just out of curiosity, is it possible to pursue a claim against the owner of the car?
Claims to be against the city of Aurora. City crew was there, ambulance crew was there. We could not get a hold of Wayne and we could not get a hold of Generally. He came and answered their phones.
All right, well, I appreciate that additional information. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion.
So moved. Support? Further discussion?
Support.
If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we stand adjourned until, let's see, the 12th, right? We're going to have our special meeting on the 12th. And then we'll have this regular council meeting on the 19th. Yeah, okay.
And maybe 4:30 on the 12th.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll follow up tomorrow
Yeah.
and see if we can get that scheduled.
Stay tuned for public notices. All right.
It didn't even have to be a late meeting, I showed up, you know?
I mean, I was shocked with your presence.
Well, you're a man of your word. You said it wasn't long enough to be here, so. Well.